All right, hello guys. Welcome to this week's episode of the Ultimate Show. I'm Ben, and we have James alongside me. And this isn't a normal episode, is it, James?
No, it's not. It's not. One, we don't have Andrew.
That's true. That is very true. And also, most of the league has 3 or 4 games left to finish out the regular season. And if you're Madison Radicals, then two games left. So that means the regular season is coming close to an end, and with that being said, the playoffs are right around the corner, and we're all pretty excited for that, I know. So today
Yes.
in our episode, we'll be doing a little bit of a playoff preview along with the standings, and I'll look ahead into week 15, is it, right?
Yeah, week 15.
That's what I thought. All right, so let's get the standings and the playoff scenarios from the East Division, James.
All right, guys. First off, we'd like to formally apologize for not being around the last couple of weeks. There was like a bunch of scheduling conflicts, and just one more thing before I start talking about Ultimate. I'm wearing the Predators Conference Championship hat because unfortunately we didn't get the Stanley Cup this year, but all for next year.
Progress.
Now to Ultimate. Now to Ultimate. Okay, so in the East, here are the current standings. We have in the hunt right now. Well, we actually have who's clinched the playoffs. I'm going to talk clinched the playoffs. We have the DC Breeze who are in second place, and the Montreal Royal who are in third place in the East. And in the hunt, we have Toronto Rush who are in first place, and New York Empire who are in fourth place. And I may have to explain why Toronto is still considered in the hunt. So, the reason why Toronto's still in the hunt while DC and Montreal have clinched is because of the series that has gone on with New York. DC and Montreal, well, first off, Montreal has already beaten the season series as far as New York goes, and New York having 6 losses and Montreal having 8 wins means there's no way that New York can surpass Montreal in wins. DC has already beaten the series with New York as well. However, it doesn't really matter because DC having 9 wins and New York having 6 losses means that New York can't even tie their record, much less get ahead. Now, with Toronto and New York, Toronto has not won the season series with New York as they've only played New York 1 time, and they're scheduled to play them 2 times. Toronto beat New York, I think, by 4 or 5 points in their first game. However, they have not played their second game. And because Toronto still has 8 wins and New York having 6 losses means that New York can tie the record. And if New York can beat Toronto by more, and if Toronto was to lose out, making them 8-6, and New York was to win out, which would make them 8-6, and if New York was to beat Toronto in their last game against each other by more points and Toronto beat them by, then New York would get that playoff spot. So that's the reason why Toronto hasn't clinched, is because the season series with New York hasn't finished and they don't have enough wins to keep New York from tying their record. However, if Toronto wins this week against Montreal, they're playing Montreal. If they beat Montreal this week, Toronto will clinch their playoff spot. Not first seed, but they will clinch that playoff spot. First seed is still up for grabs in the East. However, Toronto is in a very good place to have the number 1 seed for, I think, the 3rd or 4th straight year. Something of that nature. I can't really remember. I think like 4th straight year. And so those are the playoff situations in the East. So we have clinched DC and Montreal. DC's 9-4, Montreal 8-4, and we have in the hunt Toronto 8-3 and New York 5-6. Now we're going to go to the Midwest Division for Ben's playoff scenarios.
Yep, and just to make sure in the East, the Philadelphia Phoenix and the Ottawa Outlaws are eliminated.
So yes, they are officially, mathematically eliminated.
So the Midwest is a little bit more simple. Madison is on top right now at 10-2. They have not clinched the number 1 seed yet, but they have clinched a playoff spot. the Minnesota Wind Chill have also clinched a playoff spot. Let's go. I'm pretty excited about that, as Andrew didn't even pick them to make the playoffs this year. So being 8-2 and second seed, I can't complain. So Minnesota has also clinched a playoff spot, but not sure what seed yet, because in third place sits the Pittsburgh Thunderbirds, who are 7-4, and they're still technically in the hunt because the season series has not finished with the Indianapolis Alley Cats, who are 4-7. So both of them have 3 games left. Basically, if Pittsburgh wins one more game and Indianapolis loses one more game, then the 3 playoff teams are decided, as the Chicago Wildfire and Detroit Mechanics have been eliminated from playoff contention. And I mean, it still could happen because Pittsburgh has a pretty tough schedule. I believe they play Minnesota and Madison one more time. And do they play Indianapolis again?
I don't know if they
I will
do,
check.
but
I will check.
I think the AUDL already said that Pittsburgh clinched their playoff spot when they beat Chicago.
No, I don't think they have, because I don't think they have.
I might need to check
Yeah,
the
because
scheduling
it
of
wasn't
this
on the tweet that I saw of who was clinched. I didn't see that they had clinched yet.
Okay. So this is when we have to check our facts, guys, just to make sure everything's right. It happens to even the best.
Well, I don't think we are the best. We're trying to be the best anyway.
We are
giving you guys
okay.
The right information rather than being quick videos.
Yeah. So all right, come on, American Ultimate Disc. Okay, so Midwest clinched playoff spots: Madison Radicals, Minnesota Wind Chill, and Pittsburgh Thunderbirds.
So it has been clinched?
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks AUDL Twitter for telling me wrong. Okay. maybe I should go on Facebook instead, right?
Yeah. I think it's when they beat Chicago. When they beat Chicago, because Chicago was still in the hunt as well.
Oh yeah,
so,
that's true. I know. I looked at the AUDL's tweet today, and I don't think Pittsburgh was on it, but that could have just been an error. So, number 1,
keep
Madison
talking.
Radicals,
I'll check while you're talking.
2, Minnesota Wind Chill, and 3, Pittsburgh Thunderbirds, guaranteed to be in the playoffs. So, the Midwest is all wrapped up. So let's move on to the West, which is, let's just say, kind of crazy. 5 teams are still in the hunt. Nobody has locked up a playoff seed. And basically all we know is that Vancouver Riptide will not be represented in the playoffs.
So sad.
That's basically all we know for the West Division. Temporarily, San Jose Spiders 8-3 at number 1 right now. San Francisco Flamethrowers and Los Angeles Aviators are at 7-4, and in 4th place, the Seattle Cascades are 6-5, and in 5th place, the San Diego Growlers are 5-6. So theoretically, any of them could miss the playoffs, and any of them could clinch the playoffs. So,
correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but if San Jose wins their next game, do they not clinch?
They still don't. Well, they might, because 4th place is still 6-5. So,
okay. Wait, what's the season series with Seattle then?
I think it's 1-1.
Oh, okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken though. Yes, it's 1-1.
Okay, so
yeah, good stuff. So really, just wait another week for the West to chill out, and we'll see if we got anything from there. So James, what do we got for the South?
Okay, so the South Division, just like the Midwest, everything is officially locked up. No one's in the hunt. Everything has been clinched. We have, except for seedings. Seedings are not yet clinched. Now, Jacksonville, as far as Raleigh and Dallas goes, they have both clinched a home playoff game. No, my bad. Dallas has not clinched a home playoff game. Raleigh has clinched a home playoff game. Not guaranteed whether it's going to be it's not guaranteed whether it's going to be in the Southern Division Championship or in the the first round. So it's not guaranteed whether it's going to be division championship or first game, but they're guaranteed a home playoff game. Dallas and Jacksonville are still fighting to see who's going to be second and third seed. If Dallas wins one more game, that will decide if Dallas wins one more game, Jacksonville will be third seed, and that will also occur if Jacksonville loses one more game. Obviously, I'm pretty sure if Raleigh wins one more game, if I'm not mistaken. No, so a lot of craziness. If Raleigh wins one more game and Dallas loses one more game, Raleigh will be the number one seed. Now, Raleigh's last two games are unfortunately against my National Night Watch. So, barring any miraculous, amazing events, Raleigh will most likely go 13-1 and have the number one seed in the entire AUDL playoffs, which would probably be the best Raleigh's ever done ever. I feel like this Raleigh team is very strong. However, I don't think Dallas needs to be number one seed to win the championship because this Dallas team is still ridiculously strong. But Raleigh, Dallas, and Jacksonville are the three Southern Division playoff teams. This should be very interesting. Raleigh has beaten Jacksonville in the two matchups they've played. Dallas is 1-1 against Raleigh. Dallas has lost to both Raleigh and Jacksonville. So, in the South Division this year, I feel like, it's anyone's game. Anything can happen. This is going to be interesting. Which one of these three teams go to championship weekend?
Yep, that's very true. So there's the playoff preview done. Obviously, we don't know too much for some of the divisions, but we told you what we know. That's for sure. All right, so quickly before we move on to the upcoming games, I just want to give a shout out to the Madison Radicals. Although the game wasn't what I hoped for on last weekend against the Minnesota Wind Chill, the Madison Radicals did set an attendance record for the game. Let me remember the number. I believe it was 1,423.
I remember it was in the 1400s.
Yeah,
no,
that
exactly.
came to the Madison Radicals game against the Minnesota Wind Chill. I still don't think that beats the all-time record because I'm pretty sure Montreal in that big stadium of theirs has attracted more than that.
I think they had 2,500 at one
Yeah,
game.
that makes sense. But still a good job to the Madison Radicals, and way to go, growing the sport. So let's get to the upcoming predictions for the next week of games. And we'll start in the East Division.
Okay, so in the East Division, it seems that we only have one game in the East Division, but it's a game that everyone loves to see. That Canadian rivalry between Montreal and Toronto. It doesn't get any better than this, especially since this is a possible playoff matchup. It makes it even better. Like I said, Toronto has not clinched anything yet, actually, much less number one seed. They haven't clinched anything yet. Miracles can still happen. But Montreal and Toronto going at it again. It's going to be in Toronto. Of course, as always happens, Montreal beat Toronto earlier in the season. Toronto got the win back later in the season. Now they're playing for the season series. This is very important because if Toronto wins this game, they will clinch a playoff spot and have the season series over Montreal if they finish with the same record, which will put Toronto over Montreal in the standings. If Montreal beats Toronto, Toronto still has to clinch a playoff spot, and that puts Montreal in position with DC, who I'm pretty sure they have the season series over DC, and that also puts them in position to get number one seed in the East, which would give them a first round bye into the Eastern Division playoff game at home in Montreal, where championship weekend will also be played. So, things are on the line for both teams. Montreal is trying to get in position for number one seed. Toronto is trying to get into the playoffs for like the fourth straight year. So, I think this is probably the first time that these two teams are playing with these like large stakes.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I feel like Montreal is going to keep the dream going. I think Montreal takes Toronto. Like the podcast I heard at the beginning of the season, someone said that Montreal had no chance to go into championship weekend, and they most likely weren't going to make the playoffs. Well, Montreal's in the playoffs now, and I'm pretty sure they want to keep crushing that person's dreams and just want him to know that everything he said was wrong. I think Montreal wants championship weekend, and they want the first round bye, obviously. Um, I have a feeling Montreal beats Toronto. It's a gut feeling. Montreal over Toronto.
All right, so definitely what people would think of as an upset pick, but I like the pick. I like the pick. All right, so in the Midwest, it's pretty simple. 2 games. Minnesota road trip. They visit Detroit and Pittsburgh on Saturday and Sunday, respectively. Um, Game against Detroit on Saturday. Detroit has only won once this season, and that was against Chicago. Haven't looked great since, and I think Minnesota's going to take that one, resting some of their key players. But this Minnesota Pittsburgh game, ooh, that's tough because Minnesota can hang around with the big teams most of the time if they're not down too much in the first quarter, as in the case of last week. Um, they can usually hold out pretty well, but this is in Pittsburgh. Oh, that's so hard because they're both so good. It's kind of like, one of those matchups you always want to see with the great offense versus the great defense. Because I'm pretty
Yes.
sure Minnesota Wind Chill are the only team above 500 with an under 50% point conversion rate.
Are you
Yeah,
serious? Wow.
that's just how good their
And this is
defense is. So,
this is this is also the most likely first round matchup
yeah,
in the
yeah.
Midwest.
Granted, I mean, yeah, the Radicals have won the season series. Oh, that's hard to say. Oh, border battles, love them. So should be great to see. But I am gonna go with Minnesota again, just because you got to go with the boys that you rep. And I don't think the owner, who I'm trying to get an internship from next year, would appreciate me going with somebody else. So no, I'm just kidding. But I probably would have picked Minnesota anyway, just for my bias. So now on to the West Division. There's only one game this week, and it's a Southern California battle between San Diego Growlers and the Los Angeles Aviators. Now, I've kind of been giving the Aviators grief all year. I said they weren't going to do much. They're above 500. I think they're tied with San Francisco for almost first in the division. I mean, both of these teams are still in the playoff hunt, but San Diego really needs to win, or else they're probably out of it, you could say, since they need to gain 2 spots to get back in. So I'm going to give this one to San Diego because I think they have to win or else they're done. So this is definitely a must-win game for them. So I'm picking the San Diego Growlers. And James, let's get your opinion on the South and wrap things up.
Okay, so in the South, we have 3 games. One of them is very interesting. The other 2 are kind of just teams. They're kind of just 2 teams playing for pride and being hopeful for next year. I would talk in chronological order, but I think I'll save the first game for last in this
Good
case.
idea.
Oh, the first game I'm going to talk about is a Saturday game, 7 o'clock Eastern time, Raleigh at Nashville. I find it kind of weird that they put the Nashville at Eastern time, or they have everyone at Eastern time. Okay, so I was like, the National is in the Central time zone, definitely. So, playing at 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern. You know, as much as I love Night Watch, much as I love my home team, this just hasn't been their year. I don't want to see them have a defeated season. That would just suck. At least want them to have one win. And so, like, I'm gonna pick Raleigh to win this game. That way, just so like no matter what happens, like I can be happy because obviously I'm rooting for Nashville, but I picked Raleigh. So if Nashville wins, I won't be upset. And if Raleigh wins, I will have gotten the pick right.
Oh, you'll
So
you'll
either
be
way,
bouncing if Nashville wins.
so um, it's either way I'll be happy. And then Jacksonville versus Austin. Austin has kind of underachieved this season. Definitely is not the team that I saw last year and a team that I thought was going to be in the playoffs. At 4-8, they're just sitting in 5th place, which is sad because the South has a lot of talent. It really does. And the thing about it is, there's only 3 teams that are going to be above 500. I mean, even Evan Lepler said this was going to happen just because the parity in the league has gotten so much better
Mm-hmm.
that there would be good teams that didn't make the playoffs and even better teams that didn't go 500. So it's just sad that it haven't happened in the South. Um, but in sports, these kind of things happen. I still wouldn't want I doubt any team in the league would want to see one of these powerhouses from the South at all. And some of them are probably glad they didn't have to play them during the season. Madison's wishing they hadn't had to play Dallas during the
Oh
season.
yeah.
DC's wishing they hadn't played Raleigh during the season. So I'm just saying, don't sleep on the South Division because we will come and we will embarrass people. Now that being said, I think Jacksonville beats Austin. I mean, when you got Cole Sullivan, this breakout star Jeremy Langdon, who I didn't know until this year, but apparently he's doing big things on defense. I think he's one of their leading goal scorers or assists, leader in assists or goals. It's one of those two, and I can't really think about which one. And then Big Misha, yeah, yeah. And then Big Misha Freystarter, the name that everyone knows, that I hate knowing, and I hate having to see him in Nashville because it just never ends good for us. Yeah, so there's that. I think Jacksonville takes this. Everyone these the sad thing is these are playoff teams going against non-playoff teams, and all they're trying to do is at this point secure their place in the standings. They're trying to have a better chance at having a home playoff game, possibly getting first seed. Jacksonville can't get first seed, but Dallas still can. Now, speaking of Dallas, this is the next game: Dallas versus Jacksonville. Now, this is an awesome game to look at because if Dallas beats Jacksonville, and I'm looking up now the schedules to see if I'm wrong, I think Dallas has one more game against Raleigh. Do they? Wait, no, they don't. Raleigh's last two games are against Nashville. They don't. So I really don't know whether or not. See, I know if Dallas loses. See, if Dallas loses, I'm trying to figure out whether Raleigh would clinch or not, and I don't think they would. But I have to check the scoring in those games. Dallas won the first meeting 33-18, and Raleigh won the second meeting 32-25, which would actually mean Dallas has the season series due to points scored in games, point differential in games. So that's the tiebreaker as far as I'm concerned. I think that's how the AUDL does that particular tiebreaker. I could be wrong though. Do you know, Ben?
I believe you're right. I believe it's well. So Minnesota lost the season series to Madison because they played 3 games and Madison won 2 of them. Um, but if it's a 2-game series, I think that's how it goes.
Yeah. So Dallas actually has the season series. So just because Dallas loses doesn't mean that that Raleigh clinches number 1 seed.
Well, they have to lose to Nashville twice, which is
yeah,
pretty tough to do.
Even once is asking for a lot. So that being said, I think Dallas. If Jacksonville beats Dallas, things get a lot more interesting because now Jacksonville has a chance at a home playoff game. Jacksonville at this point is actually playing more for a home playoff game than they are for anything because Dallas loses, Jacksonville has a chance at a home playoff game. If Dallas wins, Jacksonville's stuck in puny little 3rd seed, which is nothing wrong with puny little 3rd seed. I mean, we've never had a 3rd seed. No, we've never had a 3rd seed make championship weekend. Last year, we saw the first ever 2nd seed make championship weekend and all the way to the AUDL championship just to lose to the super stacked Dallas Roughnecks.
Mm-hmm.
But in this division, I don't see a reason why the 3rd seed couldn't make. I don't even in the West Division or the East Division. I think either one of those thirds. Yeah, I think either one of those 3rd seeds could make it. But a home playoff game, having the momentum of your crowd is always a good thing. But I think Dallas takes this over Jacksonville because that first loss was their first loss of the season. So now they definitely want revenge, or their first loss ever. Yeah, they definitely want revenge over Jacksonville. Secure that 2nd seed. Well, wouldn't secure it. It would actually keep them in played for the number 1 seed. But I really want to see Dallas have to play both Jacksonville and Raleigh in the playoffs, just because that, especially if they end up doing what they did 2 years ago, where it's like a back-to-back playoff, and it's like I don't think
Oh,
Dallas
that
can
was
handle that.
horrible. I remember when Minnesota had to play Pittsburgh and then Madison straight off the bat. Oh, that was
No,
horrible.
oh no, you remember 2 years ago when Chicago was in the playoffs,
Yeah,
third
they had to
seed?
do that too.
Yeah, it was Pittsburgh was the second seed as I remember, I think, and they played Chicago in Madison, and then later that day they had to play Madison in the division
Yeah, that's what
championship,
Minnesota had
which
to do
was
last year too.
and
Heartbreaking.
that was like the unfairness of that is like
Oh
ridiculous.
yeah.
Let's
Oh
face
yeah.
it.
It's even hard like if you do it like back to back days. Like if you get one day of rest, it's still
Yeah,
unfair, but that's
but
just ridiculous.
having to play that same day. And like at that point, I'd say the Midwest was probably the strongest division as far as parity
Yeah.
goes, because there was a lot of talent in the Midwest. So, I mean, that wasn't fair for either
Oh
team,
no. Just gave
except for
Madison a free
Madison.
just gave Madison a free ride to championship weekend.
Yes, like Madison is like the LeBron James of the Midwest. I say like I would say one whole player, but if I was to say one player is LeBron James, as much as I don't like him, I'd have to say Bo Kittredge, just because he's won the last 3
That's true.
championships. Now given he had to ride the coattails of the Roughnecks to win it last year, but
It worked.
he's he was a 2-time MVP, so I'm not going to take any credit from him.
All right. Well, what's your pick for the game then, James?
Oh, Dallas over
Dallas.
Jacksonville.
All right. All right. So with those picks, that wraps up our playoff preview. Obviously, we don't know too much, but we'll keep you updated. That's for sure. We'll be back next week, and we hope you guys have a great weekend and watch some great Ultimate. See you guys later.